Good evening. You're watching the news at 7:30 on ATV. I'm Edna Tse.
And I'm Marie Sim. Here's a look at tonight's top stories.
MTR under fire again after computer glitch causes 30-minute East Rail line shut down.
Experts warn of dangers of Middle East respiratory syndrome after cases surge.
South Korean PM quits after criticism over government handling of ferry disaster.
The MTRC is under fire again after the entire East Rail line was suspended for 35 minutes this morning because of a signal failure.
Many passengers complained that the railway company failed to tell them what was going on. Bo Leung reports.
From Hong Kong to Lo Wu and Lok Ma Chau, passengers were stranded on station platforms and inside trains for over 30 minutes this morning. The entire East Rail line ground to a halt after a signalling fault at around 8:10 a.m. MTR said a computer glitch at the control centre meant operators couldn't detect signals from trains, so they couldn't tell where each one was. That meant shutting down the whole line for obvious safety reasons while repair work was carried out. But passengers were left fuming, with many complaining they weren't told what was causing the hold-up. This woman said they were initially told there would be a 10-minute delay, but it took much longer. This man criticised MTR for not making alternative transport arrangements, even though the company didn't have much notice. In Hong Kong, passengers were told to get off their trains and wait on the platform. There were arguments at Fun Ling Station when travellers took their frustration out on MTR staff. Services didn't return to normal until 8:45 a.m. The company is under fire for delaying its announcement of the breakdown. Some people are even suggesting MTR was trying to cover up the incident because the suspension wasn't announced until around 20 minutes after the signal failure. Lawmaker for the Labour sector, Tan Ka Piu, demanded to know why it took so long for the company to tell people about the service disruption. But the railway giant denied concealing information and argued that engineers needed time to figure out what exactly was wrong.
Usually for this kind of signaling problem, we can recover the systems within 10 minutes or so. So our staff has already tried to capture what's the problems on site. At the time of the recovery action, they find that we require a little bit longer time, possibly in 20 minutes for the recovery action.
Lee also dismissed criticism that it took longer than usual to tell the media to make public announcements.
27th, we have already we find that we need more time. So we, based on the established system with Transport Department, we issue the alert, and at the same time we also call upon all the media to help us to communicate message out to public.
MTRC apologised for the incident and promised that an investigation will be carried out tonight to find out the cause of the disruption. A report will be submitted to the Transport Department within a week. The hiccup this morning is the latest in a string of problems that have hit MTR services. Last month, the government announced that the MTRC was fined $27.5 million last year for breakdowns and disruptions. Under the current system, for every incident which causes a delay of more than 31 minutes, the MTRC is fined $1 million to $2.5 million, depending on the length of the delay. Bo Leung, ATV News.
A top microbiologist has warned that the symptoms of respiratory illness in the Middle East are similar to the flu, and that raises the chances of it spreading.
Ho Pak Leung also called for greater transparency and more information about the infections. As the number of reported cases of the potentially deadly Middle East respiratory syndrome, or MERS, surged this week, public health experts are struggling to understand where it originated, how it spread, and why there's been a sudden spike in infections. In the past week, significant outbreaks occurred in healthcare facilities in Saudi Arabia's coastal business hub of Jeddah and in the neighbouring United Arab Emirates capital Abu Dhabi, both involving health workers, infectious diseases experts said. The World Health Organization is particularly worried these two clusters could indicate there's an evolving risk in the spread of MERS. Hong Kong University microbiologist Ho Pak Leung today criticised the lack of information about the clusters of MERS and the risk factors.
I think there is not enough transparency about the information surrounding the cluster of infection in some of the healthcare centres in the Middle East. So unless we have more information about those outbreaks, what are the factors that lead to the human-to-human transmission in those medical centres, we would not be able to develop specific measures to prevent such outbreak from happening again in the future.
MERS, which originated in camels and usually causes coughing, fever and pneumonia, currently cannot be treated with a vaccine or antiviral measures. It can be transmitted either from infected people or camels, which are common in most Saudi cities.
According to the scientific information, camels in the Middle East can carry the virus, and there have been some cases with very strong linkage to contact with camels. So I think given the information, travelers to the Middle East should avoid direct contact with camels.
Ho warned that the symptoms of MERS are very similar to the flu, so unsuspecting patients may not seek treatment, and that raises the risk of them spreading the disease through the community and causing an outbreak.
Unless you can clear those suspect of the infection, if they are allowed to board public travel transport system, there will be the chances of there will be a chance for the infection to spread from the patient to other passengers sharing the same transport system.
So far, more than 300 MERS cases have been reported to the WHO globally, including over 90 deaths.
Police say they have smashed a triad-controlled horse race betting syndicate. 13 people aged between 27 and 66 were arrested after officers raided 14 premises across the city today. Police believe the syndicate has been operating since the start of the horse racing season, and the daily turnover is about $100 million. The operation is ongoing, and the police haven't ruled out making more arrests.
Health Minister Ko Wing-man says the hospital authority is reviewing the zero-quota policy for mainland mothers giving birth here.
But he insisted the government will consider the needs of local women first. The zero-quota policy for mainland mothers was introduced last year to ease overcrowding in maternity wards in Hong Kong hospitals. Responding to reports that the government may ease its policy to allow women from across the border with Hong Kong spouses to give birth here, Health Minister Ko Wing-man said today that the hospital authority is reviewing its public services and a decision has not been made yet. Ko said the government hasn't received the report from the authority yet, but it has noticed a decline in the local birth rate since the policy was introduced and is reviewing its obstetric services. He added that the government has a responsibility to ensure that local women get priority at public hospitals and that services for them will not be affected before making a decision. Ko also urged the public and tourists in Hong Kong to maintain good personal and public hygiene. This follows reports that internet users are calling on mainlanders to let their children urinate in Hong Kong streets as a protest during the Labor Day holiday this week. This comes after a mainland couple was photographed allowing their toddler to urinate on a busy Mong Kok street. The couple then got into a heated argument with locals filming the incident. Ko said he is not pointing fingers at any particular group of people, but reminded everyone, locals or tourists, to respect Hong Kong's laws, which state that it's illegal to litter or urinate in public. He added it's difficult for officers to keep an eye out for such offences round the clock at every corner, but stressed they can and will take action. Ko said he will talk to his staff about strengthening public education on the issue.
Taiwan President Ma Ying-jeou has decided to suspend building a controversial atomic plant that led to thousands of people taking to the streets of Taipei to demand that the government abandon nuclear energy. 2 of the island's 3 existing plants are located at New Taipei City, and another is under construction. Ma's government had planned to hold a referendum on whether the under-construction plant should become operational. But after a meeting of the ruling Kuomintang, he decided to seal 1 reactor after some safety checks and scrap construction of the 4th.
Overseas, South Korea's Prime Minister has resigned after criticism of the government's handling of the recent ferry disaster.
Search teams have been unable to recover any bodies for over a day due to worsening weather. Arthur Kyola reports.
The right thing for me to do is take responsibility and resign as the head of the cabinet, said South Korean Prime Minister Chung Han-won at an emergency press conference called this morning. Chung is resigning following criticism of the government's response to the ferry disaster earlier this month, in which a vessel carrying mainly students capsized and sank on its way to the island of Jeju. He said keeping his post would be too great a burden on the administration, and apologized on behalf of the government for the many problems, including preventing the disaster in the first place and early handling of the rescue operation. There has been anger at the slow pace at which bodies are being recovered and inconsistent information provided by authorities. The day after the disaster, it was announced that all the students had been rescued. The same day, Chung visited the scene and was hit by a water bottle and booed at by angry relatives of the missing passengers. He admitted there were too many irregularities and malpractices and called for them to be addressed to prevent similar tragedies. He revealed that he was planning to resign earlier, but felt responding to the crisis and acting quickly were more important. It probably also would not have been good for President Park Geun-hye's image, coming around the same time of U.S. President Barack Obama's visit. Meanwhile, the South Korean Coast Guard says divers in the search area had not been able to recover any bodies in the last day due to bad weather. So far, at least 15 crew members of the ill-fated vessel have been arrested. They're accused of negligence and failing to help passengers as the ferry was sinking. The Sewol's captain initially told passengers to stay where they were and took 30 minutes to issue an evacuation order. Investigations are looking into both human error and mechanical failure. Arthur Kyola, ATV News.
Time now for sports with Brittyn Clennett.
What's the latest in football?
Some action from Europe. Real Madrid and Bayern Munich won their domestic league matches ahead of their Champions League clash next week. There was a moment of silence